Welcome to a Homegrown family podcast, where we grow the produce and the kids. Welcome everybody to a Homegrown family podcast, where we talk about anything from gardening, beekeeping, preserving foods, and all that type of homegrown things. And we also talk about family components of it as a homegrown family. My wife and I will end up discussing here eventually some of our reasons to homeschool or why to do certain practices or not for those types of things. Part of the homegrown thing also, I think, is being able to produce your own food, right? Or be able to catch and produce and preserve your own food. So I think hunting and fishing kind of aligns with some of the philosophies, I guess, of this podcast. And so not too often do I get very good stories of deer hunting, usually it's pretty straightforward. But today I have my grandpa, Tom, on this podcast. Hey, Grandpa, how's it going?
Oh, hi.
So we're over in his cabin in northern Minnesota, and we did some fishing yesterday on his lake, and we actually did pretty good. We got a couple nice-sized bass there.
Well, I put Joe in the front of the boat so he'd have first crack at the fish, so that way he could say he caught them all.
Yeah, we had a couple good ones. We had a little crappie in there we got, and a little sunfish, and
we caught some nice bass. Some of them were too big. We had to throw them back.
That's the thing about bass. Some people say it's not a very good fish to eat or whatever, but I don't know. For Grandpa and I, it seems like they're just as good as any sunfish or a northern, Yeah.
Well, I'm never that fussy. I usually just whatever bites is good. So bass is fine.
Yeah, so we tried the minnow a little bit and only caught a crappie on that. We tried a couple little smaller tackles that you can, what are they called? Just like bait tackles. You reel them in, you cast them, and you reel them in again.
Little lures.
Yeah, yep. One was a little tiny guy. We ended up catching a pretty decent sized bass on that. I don't know, how long were they? Like 14, 15-inch bass?
Well, pound-wise, I would guess they were, maybe 4-pounders?
Okay, yeah. So,
give or take.
I usually don't catch them that big.
Give or take a pound,
Yeah. Depends on who's holding it.
As long as we don't have a scale, we can guess.
Yep. So that was a good time. We didn't usually catch a whole lot of nice-sized bass like that out at his lake. So the main reason I have Grandpa on the line here today is because hunting-wise, when I grew up as a kid, we always got together at Grandpa's farmstead back there in Minnesota, central Minnesota there, and we'd always have all the aunts and uncles. Well, some of the aunts stayed home with the kids, but all the uncles and all the cousins that were able to hunt always got together at Grandpa and Grandma's house there. So it wasn't like hunting was just there to go shoot animals and fill the freezer. It was about that, but it was also about, camaraderie with your cousins, hanging out with the uncles, watching them cut up all the deer and that kind of thing. So we had some of our great uncles there even was there too every once in a while. And
of course you get all those good deer stories.
Yeah, exactly. So you always get to hear
I'll have to tell you a little story. Joe, I don't know just how it happened that I was the lucky guy to take Joe on his first hunt.
Yeah, it was literally my first hunt. And I think it was a youth hunt because it seemed like it was pretty early. It was like fairly warm.
I don't know.
Was it regular season?
I think it was regular season.
Okay. Yeah, so regular season, first year out, which means I'm like 12 years old, I think.
Well, he wasn't old enough to sit still too long.
Yeah. Well, we gotta make sure we draw this out a little bit, Grandpa. We'll start off with how we went over to my Uncle Richard's place back then. And
that was on Richard's place that he had just gotten not very long ago.
Yeah.
He had this nice big deer stand up there.
Yeah, I remember walking in, just first time, you're just so excited, walking in there, crunching on the leaves and grass, and Grandpa might, leaning back there, shh, be quiet. I might scare him away. That's
one thing, I guess, I don't know what Joe just hadn't figured out at that time yet. You're supposed to move quietly.
Yep. So yeah, we get to this deer stand finally. It was a long walk out there. We parked up by the house.
Oh.
And I know we walked through the pasture a little bit, and it was probably a 200-yard walk or so to get to the stand.
I imagine all of that,
Yeah, and it's a big size stand. I think there was even steps to go up to it, and it was like, I don't know, 8x8 stand.
Well, there was plenty of room up there.
Yeah, yep.
In fact, if Joe would have brought his guitar along, he could have played the 30-point buck song and sang it.
Grandpa's getting ahead of himself here. So that's the punchline. It was we're sitting there, and boy, we didn't see anything. It got to be about 8 o'clock, and I remember, Grandpa, when are the deer coming? He said, just be patient. And Grandpa, what time is it? Just go give it another hour, and we hardly heard any shots all morning long, occasionally out in the distance, but nothing close. All right, so give it another hour or so, and ends up being about 9 o'clock, and I'm like, Grandpa, can we go yet or what? I'll just sit still, hold your britches. Something like that. Eventually I was like, Grandpa, can I put my gun down? Like, I'm tired of holding this thing. There's plenty of floor room. I'll put it down, point the butt end towards us, and the bullet end, the rifle end go in the other direction, be safe about it. I remember this gun that Dad let me use. I don't even know if I even shot it once before going out there. I think maybe Dad brought me out once and I shot 2 rounds through it, and then I was good to go. But the gun I had was a SKX. It is 11-shot semi-automatic rifle. I guess it was a rifle that used to be used in World War II for the Soviet Union. And my dad had acquired that rifle. I think he got it refurbished from one of his friends of his who got like a deal on like a couple dozen of these rifles, and Dad ended up getting one there. But so typically, I guess I'll back up a little bit in that Grandpa's property was always rifle zone. My dad's farm there where I hunted mostly was shotgun zone, so we used slugs. And so my Uncle Richard was over there in the rifle zone again, so I had this rifle that we don't typically use very often. And I had 11 shots to be able to get a deer. You shouldn't need 11 shots, folks. You only need 1 or 2 shots and then you can get your deer. Came out to the point where I put the gun down, and I'm about done. I'm sitting there just like twiddling my fingers, and eventually I'm just like, oh, can I stand up? I was like, I don't care. Stand up. And then
Joel starts singing the 30-point buck song.
And I don't know if anybody, if you ever Googled this, it's called the Turdy Point Buck song. And I didn't really know a whole lot of it. Half the time it's chit-chatting and talking, people talking camp words and utter nonsense, really. But I just remember the one part. I stood up and I was like, gonna shoot the 30-pointer. Shoot the 30-pointer. Going deer hunting, gonna shoot the 30-pointer. And I'm just sitting here singing around, not too long, and Grandpa, I remember him whacked me on the shoulder and says, deer! And I'm like, where? And I'm looking, 10, 15, maybe 20 yards away. I'm like, I don't see anything. He gives me another tap, and he gets his finger in front of my face a little bit, and he's like, no, way out there, like it's out there.
Well, maybe not quite that far out. But
it seemed like a long ways.
But I figured when you start singing the 30-point buck song, we just as well leave. And lo and behold, I turned around and here a deer was walking across the meadow there.
Oh, it was a slight jog, I think. It was...
Well, maybe a little bit.
But I remember looking at Grandpa, and I'm like, Grandpa, I can barely see that thing. And he's like, I'm like, you want me to shoot that? He's like, shoot, you might as well.
Yeah.
So I get the rifle, and I put it on the railing of the deer stand, and I shoot, pop, and nothing happened. I kind of looked at Grandpa, I'm like, I ain't getting close to this thing, because this rifle didn't have a scope or anything on it. It was all iron sights. So I shot twice, looked at Grandpa, and he's like, keep shooting. So I turned back over and kind of re-gauged again, and at this point in time, he's definitely on a little bit of a jog. And I shoot again, and pop, and tumbled over. And I was like, oh, I got him.
Yeah. Surprise. I couldn't believe it either.
Yeah. It was just crazy. I was like, no way.
Well, like they say, it's better to be lucky.
Yeah. So then, as I shot 5 times or whatever, the deer finally went down, and I crawled out of the deer stand, and we started walking. And I got the gun, and I walked about 50 yards, like, Grandpa, this gun's getting heavy. You want to hold it? So then, so he's kind of pacing the distance too, because he's kind of curious how far it was, and so he's grabbing the gun and he's pacing off. And as we get closer and closer, we notice that this deer is still alive. Yeah, remember that, Grandpa?
Yeah.
Yep. And so then he had the gun, and it's more or less him doing the job to finish it off, right? So he ended up, shooting it there in the neck, and we ended up getting him, right?
It maybe wasn't a 30 pointer, but it was a nice buck.
Nice. It was almost barely a fork. And I didn't even think there was antlers on the thing when I walked up to it, but then lo and behold, there it is.
Yeah.
We had looked on the deer to see, where did Joe shoot this thing?
I don't know. Did we ever see a spot, or did it just scare it to death?
The only spot that I think we saw was that the one back knee was a little bit roughed up. Kind of looked like it maybe been broken a little bit. And then there's another hole on the other back knee. And so we think that I shot it between the two back knees, and it toppled over, and we got there, and it couldn't use its back legs anymore. So it was trying to get away there. But yeah, so that's the first time I ever went deer hunting, and the story of the Turdy Pointer.
Of course, I had to mount those set of that big rack for Joe. I think he still got it.
Yeah, I still have that rack on a little mount. Yeah, I'll post a little picture on my my Instagram account for you all to see a little Turdy Pointer. But yeah, so that's kind of the story there. But deer hunting's kind of been a good bonding experience for us all here in the Mettler household. So it's been a good time there. I don't know, Grandpa, we're 12 minutes in. It's kind of a short podcast. You have another deer hunting story you want to share? Or anything about the deer camp?
How about if I throw in the story about John?
Sure.
Another one of our grandkids. Now, he was I think he must have been 26 years old, 27 years old. Never went deer hunting. Grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Anyway, he decided he wanted to go deer hunting. So I told him, well, come on up. So he come up. Well, he got Bob's gun, but for some reason something wasn't working on it. But we got it to work. I put him out in a deer stand one morning, and he sat there all day. He was a patient guy. He said he was counting squirrels. He also mentioned that our squirrels are pretty aggressive. They would come up the stand and talk to him. And of course, then about evening, lo and behold, here this buck walks across in front of him. And John's a pretty patient guy. He decided it was too far away, so he didn't shoot at it. Too much brush. Well, what do you know? That buck come around again.
Doesn't learn his lesson.
He's still too much brush. He let it go again. The third time. Then he decided it was close enough, and he took a shot, and he hit it. Of course, by then it was getting dark. So that's when the fun began. We had to drag the thing out of the woods, and couldn't see to skin it or whatever. And so we was sitting there running up on a tree at the house and put the pickup lights on it, and we was working on it. And neighbor across the lot there, he was wondering what was going on. Finally, he got curious enough, and he come over to check. But anyway, John, first time out, and he got himself a nice deer. Things just ain't supposed to happen that way.
Grandpa, I think you're the good luck charm, I think.
Well, I can't say that much for myself. I'm still waiting for that 30-point buck.
Yeah. You had some pretty good deer in your day, though.
Oh, I've gotten deer, but I've never gotten anything horn. Of course, horns, they make awful poor soup, so I ain't too worried about horns.
Yeah, sometimes Grandpa's okay getting a yearling even and filling his freezer, It's always good.
They're tender.
Yeah. That's one of our mom's rules here at the deer camp, I guess, is that my folks' place is that you better not shoot a Bambi. You gotta let it grow and live some life a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of mom's general rule, Sometimes we're far away and thought that one was the bigger one, but it wasn't, and things like that. But for the most part, we try to shoot the mature animals. And now that we have, the CWD for the deer, which is like the brain disease that occurs.
Yeah, chronic wasting.
Yeah, chronic wasting disease. That's kind of a big thing here now in central Minnesota. Counties such as Stearns County and a couple other those in southern or central Minnesota. Yeah, they got to turn in their deer and they got to test them for the brains and see if that disease is in there, before you eat the meat and stuff. And fortunately, in Todd and Morrison County, they don't have a high incidence of that disease yet. So fortunately for us this time, we don't have to do all that extra testing and be too concerned. But if you're out there hunting in the central Minnesota area, if you see a deer that kind of looks mangy and things like that, you may be tempted to pass it up and try to shoot something that looks a little bit better. But, I'd say go ahead and shoot that one and get it tested, because it's kind of looking sick. You probably don't want it in the herd. So probably better for the overall population and everything if you try to get rid of that one. And recent years, my brother Michael's been getting a pretty good string of luck. I'll have to post a picture of that one on the Instagram too, but I think he's got, in the last 4 years, he's gotten 5 nice sized bucks. Yeah, 8 to 10 pointers, pretty wide. The one is probably the best that my dad's ever seen on his property there, so it's been a pretty good hunting area for us and a good time there. I don't know
where you guys find all those big buckhorns.
Yeah, half the time I think they get scared from the neighbors and come on over, and we're just waiting for them. So, I guess let me go on that a little bit. So, those of you who are listening who may not be too familiar with hunting, in North Dakota, they don't have a lot of trees. They have a lot of windbreaks and tree rows and things, and you post guys on some sides of these rows while other people walk through, and then deer jump up and run away while you shoot at them. Basically, it's kind of like how they do it in North Dakota. For the most part, you do have some tree stands that, like a lot of times what happens in Minnesota is that people sit in a tree, sneak in the morning, try to, kind of unscent themselves a little bit, sneak in there, sit up in the tree stand, and kind of wait for the deer to come. Well, occasionally, at least in our hunting camp, is that if we don't get any deer sitting opening morning and it's looking pretty dim, and then we go ahead and we do some drives. And so the drives is kind of similar to what North Dakota does, but we have a lot of swamps and sloughs and things where these deer like to hang out. And so we'll post a couple guys on the end, and a couple guys will walk through the swamp or the slough and the woods there and try to kick the deer out to the hunters on the other end. Obviously, you definitely got to be safe when you're doing this, I remember one time I was walking in the back of Grandpa's big swamp there. Back, what's that swamp? What do you call it behind your house there?
The Okefenokee, you mean?
Well, we've definitely done that one a time or two. Well, that's okay. So that's a different one. But we had this, 80 acres of this tree, brush, swampy. I'm probably one of the few cousins that actually got to drive that.
Yeah, I know Liz made the remarks that some of her younger siblings never got to go through there.
Yeah,
I think thinks they should.
Yeah, some of our younger ones never did. And boy, I know. Yeah, the one time I went through there, I don't even know if it paid to even have a gun on you, because it was just so thick in the brush, and the water was oftentimes a foot deep, it seemed like, and then, that was always a hoot. But Okefenokee, yep. But I was thinking the one by the house there.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We didn't really have a name for that.
Okay, I couldn't remember. But so there was one time where I think it was Richard, Dad, and Grandpa were sitting on the end, and me and David were sent in to go to go chase the deer out. They said, go back to this fence line, go about halfway down. One person start there, and then the other one start, a little farther down. You just walk through it. He's like, well, watch out for the middle. There's a big opening, or you could fall in, and it's just open water. So you gotta go around that, split one, go around one way, and one will go around the other way. And we got to the point where we're getting close to that spot, but we couldn't quite tell. And we're walking around every once in a while. Our brother David and I, we're like, David, can you hear me? Yep, we can hear you. So that we know that we're about halfway, that we're across from each other still, so we don't want the drives. You don't want one person to get too far in front of the other. We're walking. All of a sudden, boom. I'm like, David, is that you? Well, yeah. I'm like, you fall in? Well, darn near. He's up to his chest in water, and he had his gun across the bog, basically, where he was at that point. And his gun was kind of holding him up, basically. We were only, 14, 15 years old, but yeah. So there's some interesting things that happen over at the deer camp there, but it's all part of the experience.
Yeah, as long as it ends well.
Yep, exactly. No one's ever gotten shot in our hunting party, but we have started to do a little bit less drives and things. We guys are getting more and more hunters involved. So we try to do a lot more just sitting in our deer stands, and then have one person leave the deer stand, kind of just mosey around the woods while the rest of them all sit there in the deer stand. So that's kind of our new strategy, and it's been working pretty good.
Yeah, we kind of split up the group too now. Group at Randy's and now the group, up at Richard's, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, my grandpa sold his farmstead there to my Uncle Richard. And sort of there's the group of uncles and a couple of cousins that hunt there still with the rifle zone. And then all of my dad and my siblings all hunt in the shotgun zone. So sometimes try to get to each other's places for lunchtime or something like that, but it doesn't always happen. So it's kind of a new generational thing, right? Where now Grandpa's considered my dad, and he's the old geezer hunting now. So, Grandpa, he still grabs a gun here and gets out there.
Well, last year the kids went and put up this real nice deer stand. They tore down my whole stand and said it wasn't safe. And they've got this one on legs on a regular deer stand. And I asked them, what the heck have they done that for? I was thinking about maybe I should quit hunting deer, but I guess I can't.
Yeah, well, did you get one last year? I can't remember.
No, I didn't.
The year before you did, though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so Grandpa's 86 now, and he'll be out there again this fall.
I reckon, unless I break a leg or something.
All right, well, it's not quite November yet, but I'm sure we're all starting to think about putting our trail cameras out there and all that good stuff. So be safe out there, whether you're preparing for hunting or get out there hunting in the future here. So anyways, thanks, Grandpa, for jumping on board and being part of this podcast.
Oh, no problem. You're just lucky you caught me.
All right, until next time, everybody.